Hello. Hello, 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 hello. How are you today? Well, we're feeling pretty good here. Just checking out the control panel. March 25th, 2014. Another cool day, but apparently next week spring is really on its way. So we can all be happy. Dinosaur News. Dinosaur News brought to you daily, 5 days a week, produced by the British People's League. BritishPeoplesLeague.com. Today we're going to read the introduction to the book that yours truly is still working on, entitled Canada's Secret Civil War, 1978 to, with a question mark, by the John Beattie. This introduction comes right near the tail end of the British People's League homepage. So you have to scroll way, way, way down past all the videos, editorials, and there at the very bottom there's a 3-section on the book. There's the long introduction and a skim summary of chapters 1 and 2. Copyright 2011 onwards. BritishCanada@gmail.com. Canada's Secret Civil War, 1978 until, by the real John Beattie. Introduction. It is truly ironic. August 10th, 2011, race riots and anarchists have brought the inner cores of major cities in Britain to their knees. On this date, I finally begun typing for this book. What you are about to read should have been started 20 years ago. Coming full circle, the last race riots took place in the motherland in the first decade of this new century. So, how does a book outlining a supposed secret civil war in Canada relate to race riots in the United Kingdom? Well, let's get on the roll and I will tell you. A corny analogy. So you own 1,000 acres and the tribe has moved in next door. By hook and by crook, somehow the tribe is illegally swallowing up your 1,000 acres. Okay, let us call the land the Dominion of Canada, and let us call the tribe the mixed multitude of the rest of the planet Earth. This country has always been controlled by Anglo-Celtic, Saxon white tribes, with native Indian tribal cooperation, in unison with the same culture, history, and ancestry of those controlling the old white nations of the old British white Commonwealth. Then suddenly, bingo, one of the pieces of the matrix is being gobbled up. That piece used to be called the country of Rhodesia. Rhodesia was well known, up until United Nations interference, as the breadbasket of Africa. Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, is the basket case of Africa. The collapse of Rhodesia emotionally upset the aforementioned white controllers because a piece of the brotherhood was being eliminated. Being raised by my wonderful Scottish-English Croft family in Toronto, I felt that in a small way I was in with the controllers, even if at the bottom of the ladder. However, this book is not a biography nor autobiography. Allow for a brief referral. Scottish and English roots to the core, I was steeped in British and British Canadian traditions. My father served in the Royal Air Force at the tail end of World War II. Mother, brother, and I aboard the famous Her Majesty's ship Aquitania. Back then it would be His Majesty's ship Aquitania, coming back to Canada after a visit with him in Old Blighty while he was still serving. He also took part in British machinations during the Suez Crisis in the mid-50s, serving in Egypt Royal Air Force. I became a teenage air cadet in Toronto in the Royal Canadian Air Force, and later a member of the Royal Canadian Air Force for 5 years, honorable discharge. This led to a good stint in the Royal Canadian Legion as an ordinary member. Back to Rhodesia. I too was alarmed about a piece of my extended family history, a piece of everything I read about. As to our ignorant white exploitation, I could care less that it was white exploitation. I was what I was and I am what I am, a product of British imperialism, mind you, in the Dominion of Canada. There was a new toy out in the technical world at the same time as Rhodesia was being slaughtered by the United Nations, etc. This new toy was called a codophone. Being the political yapper that I have always been, I made use of the broadcasting gizmo, the codophone, as an outlet to reach at least some of the general public. It was a fantastic device back then, yet simply the forerunner to the modern telephone answering machine. Put yourself in my shoes. I felt a piece of me was being ripped out of my body, yet I had no means to scream to the world that the murder of Rhodesia must be thwarted. Bingo. Thus began my 3 minutes or so of broadcast steadily from 61 Kingsmark Park Road in the Upper Beach area of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Rhodesia calling was my urgent plea to assist our cousins far away. Thousands of visitors phoned in to hear my dramatic, urgent appeal to help save Rhodesia. Tied in with a supposed secret civil war in Canada? Obviously, I was not the only one concerned about the slaughter in Rhodesia. A segment of the elite of my people were ready to move. I had the honor of knowing that my tapes inspired the beginning of an enormous backlash, as they too had had enough of the deliberate planned conspiracy to genocide our peoples. If it could happen to Rhodesia, then just as surely it could happen to Canada. We shall unveil how the vocal inspiration provided by yours truly shook up our elite to do more than just grumble. In fact, plans were set in motion to walk the walk. You can believe what you wish from the following pages. Proof of strange middle-of-the-night activities will be offered circumstantially by way of reference to strange news clippings in well-known national press throughout Canada. I shall build the case for what took place as best I can. It is your job to research, find, and read the references outlined to confirm for yourself the truth in the following pages. These pages merely point the way. No one likes conceit. I simply was successful beyond my wildest hopes. And stirring up a call to action whereby serious talk took place in a couple of the highest private clubs in Canada. Serious talk took place in a couple of the highest private clubs in Canada. Rhodesia was the catalyst. Yours truly, the mouthpiece, and the head honchos of Anglo corporate Canada were to be the new open administrators of Canada. Then I have marked footnote 1, administrator, as in Canada's constitution based on the North America Act. Look up administrator. That's the legal backing for what took place in the British North America Act. Continuing. Well, with Pierre Trudeau changing the face of Canada by kicking British Canadians in the face, along with René Lévesque moving to pull Quebec out of Confederation, our shadow cabinet started to plan in earnest. The screams of the British-Canadian corporate wives reverberated throughout these highest private clubs. The screams of the British-Canadian corporate wives reverberated throughout these highest private clubs. Highest private clubs. Yes, the wives overheard the most insane discussions that they had ever heard muttered from their pompous hubby's lips. A what? An administrative coup in Canada? Some of the wives not so friendly tipped off the other side. Later in the book, you may have the pleasure of trying to figure out who the other side consisted of. The variables are complex. When the multi-cult power brokers realized that our boys were dead serious, these same power brokers made sure our ringleaders had to flee immediately to Alberta until the smoke cooled off. In fact, the 8 brave warriors who had the guts to risk all put the old slogan to work: 1 step backwards, then 2 steps forward. They hid out in the mansion residence of the then president of Burns Meat Company. The limo driver, who resigned from a Toronto area police force to join the Patriots, whisked them to safety at full limo speed to Alberta. In his honor, my son has his name. As the wild administrative plan was hatched, these men became clearly marked for death. Obviously, the only way they would live would be with the success of the undertaking. Like all wars, be they open, secret, civil, or whatever, the blood of the martyr is the seed of success. These brave establishment men, the first up to the plate, put any criticism that they were snobs to permanent rest. It was now the turn of the ordinary rank and file of our peoples, off-duty firemen, police, military, etc., to be fully advised as to the unbelievable plan to take our country back. Briefings took place. I witnessed the police station parking lot packed as the head of Steel Company back then, the head of the Steel Company of Canada back then, urged patriotic men in blue to join with us in the dead of night activity to save Canada. This on Coxwell Avenue on the edge of the Beach District, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. The first shots were fired Boxing Day 1978 in the Laurentians, Quebec. What? Shots fired? Who fired what at who? Planes, small planes assembled at the Buttonville Airport north of Toronto. Their mission? To have a chat with the Premier of Quebec, René Lévesque, over Christmas holidays 1978. The Toronto Sun, Thursday, December 28, 1978, printed this most peculiar short blurb, written by columnist Gary Dunsford, heading, quote, 25 words or less, end quote, quote again. Cormier says they are closing down René Lévesque until after the holidays. Seems a team of French chimney sweeps is coming in to clean out the Premier's nose. Under the photo, René Lévesque in for a sweep. At the same time, Pierre Trudeau thinks Canada is a, quote, powder keg packed with racial and regional tension, end quote. Continuing Trudeau, quote, we may be relatively poor in arms and battle equipment, but we are well supplied with all kinds of potentially explosive feelings. Pierre, quote, Toronto Sun, December 31st, 1978, while he's in Jamaica. All these feelings may explode at a time when the future of the country is being called into question, continued Trudeau. all this while extending his stay, hiding out in Jamaica. As a matter of fact, one of Toronto's newspapers over the wild and woolly 1978 Christmas period joked about the fact that not one person of the entire government cabinet was in Canada. They had all taken off for foreign lands, continued the newspaper's editorial cartoon. Hatfield fled as far as Africa to be safe. Individually, the above quotes from Trudeau and the snippet about Levesque don't mean much. Tied in with British-Canadian patriots flying out of Buttonville Airport heading for Quebec Boxing Day, December 26, 1978, Canada's secret civil war is on. Where and how does John Beattie get to tie in these strange clippings? You can believe or not believe the truth of any of this. Think about it. I'm going to interject here. A business associate in the past, when I was discussing the paperwork of the book, I said, how is anyone going to believe this? Who's going to believe this coming from Beattie? And this gal kept shoving it at me. Regardless of who believes it or not, it'll sell, it's entertaining. Well, we're not writing the book for sales, sure. We do need some cash moolah to get the British People's League on the road. But her point's well taken. If you don't want to believe the book, you will be entertained by it. But if you've got an ounce of brain in your head, you have to believe the clippings, etc., that are going to be referred to. Okay, back to the direct quotes here. Tie-in with British-Canadian patriots flying out of Buttonville Airport heading for Quebec Boxing Day, December 26, 1978, Canada's secret civil war is on. Where and how does John Beattie get to tie in these strange clippings? You can either believe or not believe the truth of any of this. Think about it. What does the short snippet about Levesque getting his nose unplugged mean? Could French paratroops be the French chimney sweeps? The French chimney sweepers? Would they be saving Levesque's life from the airplanes heading into the Laurentians over Christmas week 1978? Throughout 1978, 1979, and the early 80s, all kinds of weird clippings kept popping up in the public media. As deceased Archbishop Emmett Carter of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Toronto stated back then, if you don't know something is going on, then I do not know where you live. Toronto Star headline, March 1979. Another gem, if you care to do the research. These clippings can only be explained, in fact, with a secret civil war going on in Canada. Reference none other than Ed Broadbent, then the national leader of the New Democratic Party. Toronto Star headline, April 28, 1979, and Toronto Star cartoon showing Broadbent raving to Joe Clark, former Prime Minister of Canada, Civil War? So what have we so far? A few piddly news clips, and I'm supposed to convince you that a secret civil war was taking place in Canada. Only in Canada, you say? Name one other country in the history of Western civilization whose constitution was changed unilaterally. Name one other country in the history of Western civilization whose constitution was changed unilaterally without the will of the people. And no shots fired. The threat of Quebec's secession, Trudeau changing the laws governing the very social fabric of Canada, and with all this, the British-Canadian elite is just supposed to sit back and smile? History and human nature do not respond this way at all. We'll continue with this reading tomorrow, March 26th. Thanks for tuning in. We're just getting warmed up. Tomorrow.